Hey guys, welcome to the Pause and Read Book Club / podcast. I'm Drake. This is Tyler.
I'm Tyler.
And this month we decided to read two books. So the first one is The Fisherman by John Langan, and then Hellmouth by Giles Christian. And we're kind of doing things differently now. The first 10 to 15 is going to be spoiler free, and then we'll give our ratings then. And for the rest of the podcast, however long that goes on, is the full spoiler rant, whatever. So before all that, we'll tell you a little bit about the books. Tyler has some synopses.
Yeah, after the Ender's Game one that spoiled the whole book in the synopsis, I decided to just write my own.
What did it say? Did it say anything?
It implied that Battle School wasn't just a test; it was real.
Oh,
and that's like the whole point of the book. So
no one reads that anymore.
Hopefully, everyone that watches this one has read Ender's Game, or I just also spoiled it. Okay, so you want to do Fisherman first, or you want to do Hellmouth first?
Let's do Hellmouth. I don't think we should. There's no reason to give more than a couple minutes for Hellmouth.
Yeah.
Because it was worth a couple of minutes of.
So Hellmouth. Before I read the synopsis, we could just give what is the book. So it's just a very, very short story, short novella written by Christian Giles Christian, whatever, old mate. About it is based in Bohemia in 1370, I believe. See, yeah, 1370, which is current day Czech Republic. I think I looked it up, and that's what it is. It's basically just a tale about this knight. Or not really a knight. He's like a vagabond or like a mercenary.
A bunch of mercenaries.
Yeah,
just a band of mercenaries.
That go on a quest. So I'm gonna read the synopsis.
Yeah, go ahead.
A God-fearing man turned mercenary is leveraged into taking on a quest for a cardinal. He is tasked with hunting down a heretic believed to be hiding out in a nearby village. Against his wishes, he is forced to escort a priest or a young nun named Maud along with him and his treacherous band of marauders. It soon becomes clear that all is not as it seems on their quest to bring the heretic into the light. Dark omens fill Galen's path and his mind as he descends deeper into the depths of his unholy quest.
That's the gist of it, and we could go more into it, but that's literally what it is. You can only do so much with 40 pages of material.
I think it's literally only 45 pages.
Yeah, so I mean, there's not much more to say. So we'll talk about a little bit of our thoughts. Very good, literal page turner, but I'd hope it would be.
Yeah,
with
being how
40.
short it is.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I'd say the first 5 to 6 pages, I was like, okay, that was the only like slow start it had. And
then, it's because it just throws you right into a battle, and then that I don't want to spoil anything. It throws you right into the battle, but you don't know who these characters are or really what's happening. So you're kind of like taken aback. But once you start, throughout the battle, they start to give them character.
Yeah.
And so you start to get more engaged. And right away you notice like the gritty detail. It feels like very realistic and like crunchy.
I will say he definitely, with so few pages, he gave it life in just those few pages. I mean, I don't really know more to say. I mean, it was good. It was very good. It was a pretty, I'm not going to say basic. It is a pretty normal, medieval, gritty. Pretty, as y'all would see later on in the book, it gets even darker, but I think it's still pretty typical. But I still really like it.
It's nothing crazy, but it is like super realistic, where I feel like you can almost hear like knight's armor like clashing and banging around. Or like when they're on their horses and they're talking about like their thighs getting sore and stuff. It really like brings you into the moment, and it just adds a lot of realism to the book. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, you could like I kind of said before, he gives it life really quickly and easily, and I feel like Galen is the main guy, leader, whatever. I could just imagine his voice in my head, like old and like
just like tired of what he's doing, but
just
he's
like going along.
He's the leader of this group, so he has to just stick it out and keep going.
But yeah, I mean, that's basically the gist of it. I think that was a good little
I got more notes. You want
Well, I mean, we want to save that to the... We did that.
No, these are all spoiler free.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, these are all. That was
We'll
all
just
of
go
it.
through them and then we'll.
Okay.
I really like the gore. There's so much like vivid
man.
description. Like the one of my favorite parts is the. I don't want to spoil it, but the scene
You
with
can't keep saying that. Just don't spoil it. You got to get used to it more than.
the amount of detail he goes in. It's like bordering on the line of just being shocking for shocking, but it does kind of like keep you engaged and you feel that there's a real danger to the characters because of like some of the kills in the book. You feel like your characters aren't invincible, and it's more of like a real world scenario where they have to take risks in order to complete their adventure.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really have anything more to say unless you have anything else. I mean, that's all I got from it. You know, and I will say this, we talked about this multiple times, how we should have positioned this in our reading, and I maybe should have waited more towards the end. I'm not gonna say it's forgettable.
It's not forgettable, but that's one of my gripes with it, is why are there so many characters in such a short... Look, I wrote down the names of the characters.
How many are there, like 8?
I didn't write them all. I just wrote down the ones that I was going through. There's more. I think there's 13 men just in his clan, they say at one point.
There's a woman too,
yeah,
right?
So Galen is the main dude. Maud is the nun. You have the cardinal.
Yeah, the priest.
You have William Frey, Falkrand, Malger, Evelyn, Ranulf, and Ansel. There are more characters than that, but those are ones that actually have lines in the book. So they actually say something. And so that's really...
I remember Ansel.
Really the only big negative I have is that...
Too short.
None of these characters really have their own moment, unless it's like something significant that happens to them. But you don't get moments earlier on that like help you remember them. Like you remember Maud because she's such an odd character.
Yeah, and they call upon her a lot in the story.
Yeah, but like even Galen, you don't really get anything significant about him until like a third of the way through when he talks to the cardinal, and you kind of get a backstory about his life a bit.
Yeah.
But all his little gang, I only know, like, I was like, oh, there's 2 women.
Yeah.
I don't even have the name for the second one. I don't remember who she was.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest con about this book, and as you'll see when we go to the ratings, it is just too short. And, you know, I know what he was going for. It is just a short novella, but come on. I mean, there's only so much you could do with what it was. It was great. Yeah. I really liked it. It was
good. They talk about in the About the Author section how he wants to adapt this into some kind of visual medium. So either like an animated series or a movie or a short film or something. And I could see how that could work more, where a lot more, it could be kind of extended with just visual storytelling. Like just showing stuff. And because you only have 45 pages to draw from, but if you can extend out some of those scenes, maybe make the journey a bit longer.
Yeah, you could
that could work as like a film, just because it's a very tight concept. There's not a lot to go over.
Yeah, you could definitely draw the scene when their voyage over to the place.
Yeah,
because that was like quick, but you can make that like whatever.
And you could also
15 to 20 minutes.
You could also add more build up, like when they're finding knights in the woods.
They could even add more to that, like flesh out the story.
Yeah, at the
more.
beginning, like when he's talking to the cardinal. Maybe show his backstory instead of just having the cardinal tell it.
Yeah. So it'd be a great translation.
I think that's it for. That's about it for Hellmouth.
And we want to give our ratings.
Yeah.
Now, and so we'll give our ratings here at the end of the spoiler-free section, and they'll kind of explain more later on, of course.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give Hellmouth a 6 out of 10.
Oh. What?
Yeah.
I did not expect that.
Well,
Jesus.
Again, our rating scale, a 6 is not bad. A 6 is the majority of people should read it.
I almost say that's like okay. That's like better than it's like.
I just say I put it at a 6. If it was like a fully fledged book, it would probably be an 8. But because it's so short, there's just nothing to sink your teeth into, and there's no more surrounding lore or atmosphere about, like, you can't dig more into this story at all than those quick 45 pages. So it's worth reading just to read it, but you're not going to really gain much from it. You get an hour of entertainment, and then you kind of just forget about it.
Yeah, and I want take that into consideration when we're rating these. It just simply, that is what it is. It's hard to give it more. My rating is a 6.8
Oh,
because it was great.
yeah.
I just can't give it more. I mean, it wouldn't make sense.
Yeah,
for
in the
me to-
moment, it's great. But then once you're
Yeah.
done, you're not going to think about this story a week from now. It's
Exactly.
like, it's done.
I read the book a week and a half ago, and I have not forgotten. It's still good. I still remember everything that happened. Of course, 40 pages, but I'm not like thinking about it.
Yeah.
It was great. What it is, 6.8. Read it.
Yeah.
But if
definitely
you
read
love it, then you're kind of
Well,
weird.
if you love it, there's
Kinda
more
weird.
short stories like it.
Yeah, he
But
does
there-
other little.
But there's no more. You're never going to see Galen again, you know?
Yeah,
That's
and
the
if you
end-
want, he
end
did
of their
release
story.
his big epic fantasy is a retelling of Arthur and Merlin,
Oh,
Lancelot.
King
yeah.
Arthur and
Yeah, all that.
the Sword and
His
Stone and
retelling.
everything?
Yeah, so that's. I mean, I think it's the same thing.
Do you know the name of it?
I don't know the name of the series itself, but the first book is Lancelot.
Okay, so Lancelot, Giles Christian. If you read this, which is on Kindle Unlimited, by the way.
Yeah,
So
and there's no point in not reading it.
If you
Once
got
again,
Kindle Unlimited, it's free. It's an hour long. Read it during your lunch break.
Yeah.
If you really like it, maybe check out Lancelot.
Yeah.
So from there, I guess we can move on to the Fisherman.
We'll go to the Fisherman.
I'll hold it up.
Do you want to jump straight into your synopsis or just give a little?
We could give a little.
So the Fisherman. I guess it's about a guy that fishes.
Wow.
And his story along those lines, it's hard to even give it like my own interpretation. I think you should go straight
Okay,
to the synopsis.
well, if
unless
you want to
have-
read the synopsis, I kind of.
Oh, listen.
It's very short. It's literally.
Cast adrift by the loss of their wives, Dan and Abraham seek solace in friendship and find new purchase for life in their shared love of fishing. Little do they know what lurks beneath the surface of the Derfisher stream, where both the water and the histories run deeper than they should. That's a good one. That's good.
So-
It almost gives no imagination, so I like that. That was nice, quick. It's hard to say what the Fisherman is about in my own words. So yeah, I'll be vague. I will say it is very dense in a way that doesn't mean the exact definition of that word.
Yeah.
It is hard to get through some parts. For me, at least, it's like it is very slow. It is very thorough. I liked it. I really did. But this is not a binge-worthy series, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, as far as, great characters. The concept itself is really interesting. Gives way to a lot of interpretation.
I would say this is definitely a book. If you've never read any Lovecraft stories before, it'll work a lot better for you. So I've literally read all of Lovecraft's independent work. It's on the shelf over there. And it's kind of like it's listed as a Lovecraft horror, where I don't agree with that completely. But if you've never read Lovecraft, I think you'll find it really interesting with these like grandiose scale
Creatures.
monsters, and like a story about like you don't exactly know if the character, if everything is as it seems, or if their like mental state is decaying, where you can't exactly trust the words on the page. It could be the truth, or it could be like a warped version of the truth based on what the character is seeing.
And I will say I know nothing about Lovecraft. And I think that makes sense to me because it almost feels like everything is up for interpretation, if that makes sense. Like it's like you get what's happening, but it's also like that doesn't really make sense, and then it's like
they kind of
vague,
just give you
vague monsters.
they give
vague
you the
creatures.
truth as it is, and it's kind of like up to you to interpret.
Yeah.
Is that exactly what's going on, or is that just how like this person in a frantic state saw it, and then
And I would
just kinda
say
how
I
it's
don't know if
given
this
to you?
is a spoiler.
Let's just go
It
for it.
is. You follow multiple lines of a timeline.
Yeah. So that was. I don't know if I
There's
want
a
to get
flashback.
I don't want to
care.
get into complaints that quickly.
No, yeah,
but,
no complaint.
but
That's
well,
just
is my biggest complaint. So I'm just gonna say it. But is that you're in a flashback. Let me start from the top. You're a man being told a story, which is a flashback of an old woman's story, which is a story of her father. So you're
told
like,
by her husband.
yeah. So you're 5 layers deep in this story, and it never like tells you that. It tells it it explains the flashback in a way of like you're just being told a normal story.
Yeah.
But the more you think about the flashback, the deeper the layers go, and it's just kind of like dense for no reason, and perhaps some of these details can get obscured in the layers that you have to work back towards the truth.
I also say it's a weird story because you're conscious of it, or like the main point of view that you were used to is making you aware of this story he's about to go into from the other perspective.
Yeah.
And then just switches completely. But we're not, yeah, no complaints yet. That is the general gist of it.
I would say this is my biggest like plus for the book. The first 2 or 3 chapters, whatever, until you go to the flashback. One of the best descriptions of like loss and grief I've ever read. We have a character who's lost his wife, and it's him kind of going through this grieving process, and he even explains how like he becomes or he stops caring about his job, he goes into like depressive fits, he starts drinking, you know, all this stuff, and it has a really cool scene, not cool, but like a really gritty what's the word? Like a real tactile scene when he's at the funeral and he like doesn't know how to act. He's just like he feels like a passenger in his own body. He's just like at the funeral of his wife, and he's like, I think I did well. He's like, I was sad and I talked to people, but he's like, there's no point in life where someone teaches you how to act when your wife dies and how you're supposed to interact with her family or behave at the funeral. And I thought that was a really nice description.
There's a literal psychological term for it. You know, when you're out of body, God. I can't think of it.
I don't know what you're talking
I guess shock is the best way to describe it. There's another medical term for it, but it's just general shock where it's like an out-of-body experience and you're numb to it. No, but I think that was all fine. I think later on in the story, as you see, he begins to relate to another person. So Dan is also had a loss, of course. That was what did it for me. Obviously, Abe was fine, but I had no real...
I like the point where he's talking about how they can't... He's like, you would expect us to relate to each other because we both had loss. But he's like...
There's a ladder.
It's like his wife dies of cancer. And Dan... no, Abe. And he's like, I had time to like say goodbye. And Dan's loss is much more sudden. And he's like, you would think both people who've had similar losses could relate to each other, but it's like there's a glass wall between us, and we just cannot relate, even though we are in such similar circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, it did a really good job of that, and just to kind of wrap it up, I mean, that part does a really good job of loss between 2 adult males, and just kind of saying their story and how they find something that they could fill their time with, so they don't have to grieve as much, or it's a little bit easier to go through that. I mean, yeah, in the spoiler section, we could really rant about it.
Yeah,
but
I have one more point for this section.
Okay.
But, all right, you're finished with your point?
Good.
Okay. I just think it's such an odd book in that the prose and the construction of the wording is so good. Like, it's like, it feels good to read. It's so well constructed, but because of the way it's told in this like episodic kind of like this thing happens and the chapter ends and another thing happens and the chapter ends, it kind of like resets you every time you start a chapter, and it's very hard to get that momentum going where you can just fly through a book. It's like it's only 250 pages or so, and it both took us like dedicated time to just sit down and read it.
Yeah, and before we spin into the ratings, I'll say that exact same thing where I almost felt bogged down by the story, but it's so weird. I feel so torn about it because he's a great writer, but there's so much that I didn't love. Anyway, we'll give the reasoning.
Also, the book, I just looked at the author's wiki, and this is like an allegory for Noah and the whale story.
What's that?
From the Bible.
Oh.
So I didn't get that at all reading it. So if you're not a fan, you won't notice it. I guess there's like some similarities, but it's not really. It's very loosely. I don't even know if that's true. It wasn't a quote from the author. It's just the guy who it's the guy who wrote the wiki. He could just be making stuff up. I don't know.
Yeah, my man John said the same thing.
Yeah.
It was really hard to read this. Like we just said, I took even longer than Tyler. It literally took me, like, I felt like I was sitting there for 2 hours reading, and it had been like 20 pages.
Yeah.
Just because of how hard, as y'all see, the flashback is. But I just can't ignore, after that was over, how good it was when it all tied together. And his writing's just great. Like, I'm trying to think, like, how Dan and Abe depict their struggle was just so
and also
good.
how the characters interact. Like, all the dialogue feels very natural. It never feels like people are saying things because they have to tell a story in a book. It feels all very much fluid and just how people speak to each other.
Exactly. But yeah, of course, it wasn't anything more than that, because it's simply, I would never, like, 8+ has to be like, I can't put it down, but I have to put this book down. But it's after you're finished, it was definitely worth it.
Yeah. I was almost at a 5 during the flashback. I was like, maybe this isn't a good book. But after that's over, I'm giving it a 7, solid 7. That would be like, I think pretty much everyone, if you get a chance, if you're into horror at all, check out this book. It's not a typical horror book where nothing's really scary, I would say. Like, nothing spooky besides like a few earlier descriptions. But just the journey they go on is really worthwhile reading.
When Dan goes through his struggle, his depiction of that, and how, well, I guess Abraham's reasoning of it and how he sees it, that was almost chilling.
Yeah.
Where I was like, oh wow, that was pretty intense. It also caught me off guard how it happens, and y'all see, but yeah, I mean, not terrible. I mean, I probably could have gone lower. It's fine. 7 it's fine.
Yeah. So that's
the spoiler free, and now we're going to start with.
If you're watching the video version, from here on out, or if you're listening to it as well, but if you're listening, you're in for it. From here on out, spoilers for both Hellmouth and the Fisherman. So beware if you just want to listen to this part and then check them out on your own. Pause here. Come back in 8 months once you finish the Fisherman.
and yeah, we will. Last time we kind of had an issue of like, well, we just darted around. We're gonna try and follow the same storyline, like how it goes throughout the book itself when we're doing these spoilers. So we'll start with Hellmouth.
Okay.
The beginning was fine. It was whatever. And the Cardinal kind of steps things up.
Yeah. Well, they had the beginning battle, which
that was okay. The first book, the first page, was intense. Intense way to start it.
It was really cool to see the battle, and then of course we'll get into that later. But it comes back at the end. So that we'll get into that.
We'll talk about that because I didn't completely.
Yeah, but it was a really they're like you don't know what's happened. You're just thrown right into it. Guy was not Giles. Giles the author.
Galen.
Yeah, Galen is being drowned by a guy he's fighting, and he kind of gets the upper hand. He kills him. He's fighting another dude. One of the women throws a spear through the guy's head, and it's just guts and blood everywhere. And you can kind of like, in your head, it's raining. You can visualize like murky red water from the mud, and then the rain making everybody choke and cough while they're trying to exhaust themselves fighting. You don't even know who they're fighting. You don't even know who are the people you're supposed to be rooting for or against. And then right after that, it's like my least favorite part of the book, where it feels like a D&D campaign. They're like, oh, we finished this fight. Let's go to the tavern.
Yeah,
and everybody's having sex and drinking mead. And it's like, that kind of took me out of it. But then in the morning, he wakes up, and that's when the Cardinal comes in. If you want to go.
Yeah, my favorite thing was during that battle in the beginning. I think he depicts it. I don't know if he depicted it there or later on. He'll do it multiple times, where he's like, Galen feels his breath jagged against his helmet or something when it's closing. That's like a nice touch to have. And of course, the first couple pages was okay. It kind of just threw you into it, which it kind of has to. And the feast was fine. I mean, I liked all that. And then, of course, right when it got to the Cardinal. So the Cardinal, of course, comes in for a mission with the blacksmith's son, or was it just the blacksmith?
I thought it was the priest.
No, but like,
he lies about that.
Yeah, that was a lie, but that was his mission, and of course the Cardinal kind of forces
something we don't know because they won't go into it later. But for some reason, Galen owes the Cardinal some kind of debt, and he hates him, but he like has to work for him for some reason. We don't.
I think it's because he wants to get his sins repealed? Like in a way,
Forgiven?
like his crimes
Yeah.
to go away in the eyes
Which
of
we later
the
find out
church.
the cardinal's responsible for killing his wife and family. But
You do?
yeah,
When?
I don't remember when, but it does have. He talked about how he lived on like a cottage, and then the cardinal's men came and killed him for his past crimes of being what he is now, again, a mercenary. And now he's first forced to work for the cardinal because he has to like basically work off his crimes.
Yeah.
Like, you have to go on missions that I send you on.
I don't remember the death of his family, to be honest. I don't
It
know
was
what.
like it's like a paragraph in there somewhere.
Damn.
Yeah, but that's where we meet Maud, which is I don't know if she's a nun exactly, but she's basically a nun.
Yeah, she was just following the priest around.
Yeah,
and they
but he kind of like sees something in Maud's eyes. She keeps staring at him, and we don't get a resolution of that to the end. But we know they have some kind of connection. We just don't know what it is yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and then after that, of course, they go on their journey with the mercenaries.
And that was one of my favorite parts is when they keep finding knights that are like mutilated in the forest.
Yeah. So I mean, the first scene they enter a forest, and that was, I can say the best. That was a great depiction because you realize how violent of an act it must have been, because even Galen is like, he's almost about to throw up and hack from seeing these mutilated bodies, which we don't even see. I don't know who it had to do with, if it's just a battle that happened, but it was like...
No, it was the cultists.
Oh,
they were like,
they were in the area.
Their way.
Yeah, because he said it was like the most violent way.
And it was like, he's like, these bodies are cursed, because his men go to like loot them and take, because they apparently had really nice armor and weapons and stuff. He's like, don't touch them, it's not worth it, just leave them there.
Yeah.
And they get to the town, and it's like seemingly abandoned. The town where this heretic is supposed to be. And there's just no one there. There's no lights because they arrive at night, I believe.
Yeah, they're just searching the whole town.
There's no lanterns. And they get to the church.
And that's when everything kind of goes up a notch.
To the church. And
well, one of their members goes ahead.
Oh, that's Ansel. Yeah, it's the boy,
and of course,
the youngest.
Yeah, he walks in because he wanted, like, I don't know if he said, "Oh, I want to go in and prove himself."
They send Ansel and two others around the back to make sure the heretic doesn't escape from the back. And I think
he decided to go in.
Yeah, once they realize no one's there, he like goes in. I'm assuming the church is at the back of the town because he gets to the church before anyone else.
I imagined it in the middle of a field almost. I don't know if that's how they depicted it.
I imagine the whole town in the middle of the field.
And then I imagine it extended out to a standalone church. That's how I saw it in my head.
I just saw it as like,
because they said they were like going down the hill. That's how I.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Maybe. And then of course Ansel dies. And
what?
that was
No, Ansel doesn't die there.
He dies in the church right when they walk in.
Ansel dies at the end. He's the one that jumps in the water.
In the water?
Yeah, after they go down the well.
Someone dies right when they walk in. That was the first death because they spin him around and he couldn't talk.
Okay, well, it's not Ansel.
Oh, okay.
Because I looked back at the book. Gee, it's not any of the characters I named.
Oh.
I didn't go back that far.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, someone dies right when they walk in. Whoever went in to go check it out, he was like maddened or something. I don't know how they depicted it, but they spun him around. His face was full of blood.
I thought that was the priest they walked in on.
No, the priest was with them the whole time.
No, the priest of the church.
Oh, no.
Well, no, because he has like a goat head or something.
The heretic. Yeah, the actual...
yeah, they find the heretic.
He's like freaking... It's like super... Satanistic, like straight up. I didn't expect it at all. Goat on his head, some cult members in a circle. I think there was more than I thought. That's
when they go in the basement of the tower. I'm talking about the church in the town.
Oh shit, that's why.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, never mind. I'm wrong.
You were like combining those two.
Yeah, I forgot the church even happened. The guy that was like persecuted in the middle, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So.
I forgot that was even relevant.
Basically, everything is the same. It's just they go to that church first. Then they they're missing Ansel. That's what happens, right? Ansel's missing, and they're like, "Oh, we got to go find him." And they go across that hill, and they see that tower just sitting alone. And then they realize it's odd looking that like there's windows painted onto it, but they're not real windows. There's like arrow slits at the top, but they're not real. They're all just painted on. And they go in there, and
Then that's
they
when
hear like the screaming from the basement. Well, when they go in at first, they find all the women from the village have
oh
hanged
yeah,
themselves
that was intense too.
inside. Yeah, there's
That
just
was like
like
that was wild.
50 dead bodies hanging when they
It was
walk
like a
in
meat
there.
locker.
Yeah, and then they go into the basement, and that was my favorite scene of the book. They go in, and there's 50 men. Imagine like a rugby pool where they're locked in shoulder to shoulder. There's like 50 men just around this well, and that's where Ansel is. And he's just like, what is happening? And they get Ansel, and the men just attack them. And that's like the biggest gore fest in the book. And they
Yeah.
just slaughter 50 dudes like right there.
Yeah, and I'd like to look back. I think Ansel dies right away, but I already undownloaded the book. But yeah, that was. I mean, the goat head thing kind of shocked me because it turned straight to like right when you think of Satanism.
Yeah, I
It was
didn't.
like a true depiction.
I don't know why I didn't. I was like, not imagining traditional like Christian Satan
Yeah,
stuff. I was
yeah.
not expecting that.
And then, of course, after they slaughter all the men,
Yeah. It's Evelina falls down the hole.
Yeah, she was taken by one of the stragglers.
Yeah, and they don't even know. Like they look down this hole, and you can't even see the bottom.
Yeah.
It's just like, and
It's
they
one of
go,
those typical. Yeah, like I mean, there's nothing. There's
Yeah.
no end.
and then the other girl, which I don't have her name written down, she goes up. She cuts all the women down, and they use the rope that the women of the town use to hang themselves to lower themselves into
Yeah.
the hole.
Of course, yeah, they're not gonna leave. Whatever,
Evelyn,
and then
behind.
Galen goes, and then
well, they get in that boat when they get to the bottom.
well, that wasn't. Well, Galen goes first, and then they're like, everyone jumps down with him, and of course there's like a ledge, right? That's how I imagine it. There was like some kind of way to jump onto like a ledge. I don't know if that was the exact way they did it, and of course, yeah, they find
Yeah,
the boat.
They get into a boat. Well, they get into the boat, and
I imagine
they're-
like sticks, like
Yeah.
the
the river sticks.
yeah, that's
yeah.
what I imagine,
Yeah,
like
me
some
too.
dark.
Yeah, and then yeah, they're sailing across, and then Ansel is like, I can see Evelyn. She's right over there, and everybody's like, "What are you on about? There's
Yeah.
no one over there. There's just a empty shore." And I love the way they describe it in the book. I think this is a direct quote. I don't remember exactly, but he jumps off the boat, still in his full armor, and they're like, he jumps off,
And
and
they
then he
never
was
see him
gone,
again.
and that was it. And because he just drowned. He just jumps off into
Also,
who
another-
knows how deep water.
Another interesting thing is like how they people just die, and it's just like it's over. Like they're gone, and you have to like
Yeah.
just keep going. You have to keep going wherever they are. I think the first guy died, and then he died, of course, and then of course, did they see stuff in the water, or was it pitch black?
No,
It
it's
was
just
pitch
pitch
black.
black. Yeah.
And they got to the island.
They got to the island, and Chris, dang it, what's her name? Evelina.
Is sitting
Is
around
sitting
a
there
campfire.
around a campfire. She's like, "Hey guys,
Guys.
come on! It's been like days or
Yeah.
something." And then,
I'm
which
glad
it
you
hasn't
made
been
it.
days. It's been like 20 minutes.
And then that was when it kind of went weird.
Yeah, she brings them to like another tavern or whatever still in the well. Like who knows how many feet underground they are.
Yeah, and there's like then it becomes a feast. There's like
Yeah,
eat,
they're like
eat.
they're like
Isn't it weird how
celebrate.
they depict? I thought it was weird. They depict sex in that scene, but not
Yeah.
in the beginning where it
Yeah.
was like. But this one was like full on. He's like, "Oh, I watched one of the guys bending over a woman as
Yeah.
he yada yada with his pants down." I was like, "What is happening?" And then,
yeah. Well, then the illusion breaks.
yeah, it was a vision, of course, or illusion. And
Yeah,
then
because he sees the man. One man.
chopping,
Yeah, one man's supposed to be getting a blowjob, but he's
He's
actually
getting
getting his dick
eaten
eaten
off.
by a woman. And the guy who like bent over the woman is actually having sex with a goat.
yeah.
One of the dudes, he was like eating a huge ham.
No, he's
bone.
eating his own.
Yeah,
he's eating
but he
his
was
own.
actually eating his own arm.
Yeah.
And then he comes to also, and he's like, "Oh."
Yeah, I couldn't. I had already forgot the names, of course. I didn't know which ones were because, of course, Galen broke out of the illusion, but there are a few others with him that also broke
Yeah,
out.
I think it's William Gray is the last one to live with him. I think he's the one that was eating his own arm.
I think Evelyn, too, or one of the women broke out. Of
Yeah,
it,
the other
too.
woman, not Evelina.
Yeah.
Evelina is like already gone. She led them into the illusion.
Yeah,
She
and of
doesn't
course the
know.
goat fucker guy. I think he made it too. He was just
Yeah, but
fucking
they
a
only
goat.
make it briefly because
Yeah, he was cool.
then Satan himself comes along.
Yeah, and then it turns out Maud is the daughter. Not the
yeah, she's the
loose-
daughter of Satan, or like the. Also, it like throughout
had
the book,
escaped.
it's alluding to the fact that she knows that Galen wants to have sex with her. They keep like staring at each other, and it'll cut to her point of view, and it'll be like she knows that he's like giving her lusting looks or whatever. And then yeah, they go and it's something like he senses a demon or Satan, and then Maud grows wings out of her back that match the demons.
Yeah, and then of course,
And she's like,
"You don't." The speech is in his head.
Yeah,
that was kind of the.
She's
big
like,
thing.
"You don't remember me," and then
you let me free, or let my mother free, or something. And this is the second time that Maud had escaped. They said because he had brought her. This is your second time. Thanks for bringing her back again.
I think it's just a cycle, like an endless cycle, because of the end of the book.
Yeah.
You want to?
And then of course, the end of the book, he pops up and it's the beginning again, or it's like the same type of scene.
It is the beginning.
It wasn't word for word, because that's what confused me.
Okay, so his friends get torn apart by the devil with like 1,000 arms or something. So it's only Galen and Maud left. And then he's fighting. I think he's fighting the devil. I don't remember exactly, but I think he's fighting the devil, and he like twists him and gets his head under the water, and then it cuts back to the beginning of the book, and it's like I get my arm free, and I spin around.
I don't know if they even interacted at all. From what I remember, it was just like he takes out his sword and he's like,
"Yeah,
fuck you."
Yeah,
like,
I remember that.
And then it just
he
cuts.
He literally says, "Fuck that." He's like, "Pledge your allegiance to me."
Yeah, he's like, "Fuck that," and then it just like spins. Because I tried to go. I didn't feel like going all the way to the front of the book, but it wasn't word for word.
It's a little bit different.
Yeah, that's why I was confused.
I thought it was word for word, but I didn't go back and check.
I was confused. I did check, and I was confused because it wasn't word for word. But I was like, whatever. I got the gist of it, of course. And yeah. I mean, it kind of like spun out of control at the end. I feel like it escalated. It definitely escalated is the right word.
Yeah,
it was just all of a sudden the devil.
It's once you get down the well, it just never takes its foot off the pedal. It keeps getting more and more deranged.
Yeah.
And more like kind of like a dream state where you don't know what's real and what's not.
But no, from the moment they enter the tower to before the devil, that was like where it was a page turner. And then it kind of lost me with the devil. But I was like, it doesn't matter. It wasn't that wasn't the point.
Yeah.
To have the literal devil. But I mean, it was still a great little story.
Yeah. That's why it's like it doesn't really have an ending. Yeah. Like you don't feel a conclusion at the end. It's just like it ends where it began, but not in a very satisfying way. Which I think the story as a whole is satisfying as like a little story, but the actual ending of the story is a little like you kind of have to think about it for a second and give it your own ending in your head or interpret it how you want.
We were arguing that the main con was that it was short, but I don't think it would work if it was long unless he added I don't know what layers he could add.
I don't think you add anything. I think you just extend the story. Yeah. Like you can end the same way.
The journey was supposed to be longer.
Give more depth to the characters. Maybe give them another adventure before they work for the Cardinal. Something.
It could have been a huge, mission, but of course there was no depth to the characters. I didn't really care about any of them.
Yeah.
Except Galen, which is still like pretty cool that you could give character to one guy, but he was a leader, so. But yeah, I mean that's kind of all I had on that one.
Oh, I wanted to know your opinion on this real quick before we move on. Do you think Maud was evil? Was she a demon the entire time, or did bringing her to the place of her birth or whatever they brought her to hell, did that like awaken something in her, or did the whole time she know that's where we're going and I'm gonna be released back into my true form?
I saw it as her being completely neutral the whole time, where she was just going along with it.
Yeah, because the whole book it describes her as being like terrified of where they're going. So I think like maybe she's like possessed by a demon or something, and
that's why I was confused.
Like she herself, Maud the person, isn't evil, but the demon within her is, and wants her to go back to that place so it can be like released.
But of course, it leaves it up to interpretation because she said it was the second time, or her mother. She said something about her mother escaping. So I'm wondering, like, I thought it was like the devil, her dad, was mean to her, so she left. but then she followed them right back. Like if she was,
Yeah.
I think you might be right. I think that makes more sense if she wasn't awakened until she was within range of her.
Yeah. Again, it's never
Hell.
explained, and we'll never get any context.
Hell that is like 30 feet.
Yeah. Hell is actually only 35 feet below ground.
Yeah,
if you
it's
didn't
so
know.
weird how it just it was suddenly hell.
Go to your nearest well and jump down. You'll be having sex with goats and eating your penis within no time.
Yeah, but I think the devil is far-fetched, of course, but I think they made it known where they were going to go when the goat head was on it, and cultists, which alludes straight up to sacrifices, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Once it like described the dude had his head cut off and replaced with a goat head, and he was still moving.
Yeah.
It described him as rotting. Like he looked like a rotting corpse, but he
Just
like
placed on
picked his head up and spoke to them. And I don't remember what he said, but it was like an omen.
I don't think it could have. It wasn't like real words. I don't think, right?
It said he spoke an omen. I don't know if it said it. I don't remember at this point.
But yeah.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's Hellmouth.
And now we're gonna move on to the big one. This might take a while.
Fisherman.
Fisherman.
All right.
So we kind of talked about the whole
fish sex.
the whole like 40 pages was great. That was
You talking about the beginning?
Yes.
Yeah.
The first 40 pages where it's just a simple story about loss was awesome.
Mm.
And then the flashback was rough for the first 10 to 15.
We
don't really need to talk about it.
Well, I want to talk about Dan.
Okay.
Because his story is so shocking.
Yeah, Dan
like,
kind of came out of nowhere.
You do not. Well, I knew because I read the back of the book.
Yeah,
I knew
that.
I knew that Dan's wife was gonna die. I didn't expect his wife and kids to get hit with an 18-wheeler.
Yeah,
I was not expecting that.
That was wild.
That
that was my first shock. I was like, damn, that's great. That was like a great way to tie it in. And it was kind of, he followed the same story as Abe, where he was struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And we go more in depth with the ladder. The ladder was a great way to talk about grief.
Yeah.
Where he can't like sympathize. Well, yeah.
He sympathizes, but he's like, I'm not on your level.
He can't relate.
Like, yeah, he can't
completely because he lost his literal children before his eyes. And,
and then he talks about how Dan keeps going back to the stoplight where his family died, and they have a stoplight there now, which would have prevented his accident. And it's just like this.
He just watches it.
This like evil, ironic thing that he can just look at the stoplight that could have saved his family's life every day. And he talks about how he just sits there for hours before work every morning.
And he counts I think he said he counts the seconds between each.
Yeah, he counts like how long each light
all
lasts.
that stuff. And then, that was intense. And of course he goes through the usual, as you'd expect, grief and losing. Like, he comes into work late. He comes in without, it looks like he worn the same shirt for days.
Yeah.
Yada, yada. And then we didn't talk about the biggest thing. Abe likes to fish. Big fish guy.
Big fisherman.
That's
Abe.
how he dealt with the death of his wife, Marie.
Yeah, well, he says in the book, he's like, one day, I didn't want to go fishing, I needed to go fishing.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's just like called to him. And he's like, he went fishing, and he would just sit out there for hours. He said in the beginning, he didn't even catch anything. He would just sit out there.
Yeah.
And slowly he becomes like an actual, it's titled the book, Fisherman, where he becomes good at it. He knows all the creeks around town.
Time was a weird thing for me.
Yes.
I don't know. They kept saying that he had been doing it for a while, and I almost felt like by the time Dan's wife died, it had been years.
10 years.
That's what I thought. I was going to say 10.
It says
I think so. It did say 10.
Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that at the time. I thought it was like the next year. I was like, oh shit.
But then I realized why he was so I guess disengaged from his. No, he still felt the same way, but obviously it's been a while. He's had time to heal.
Yeah, he said he tried like at one point he tried dating a couple women, and he's like, I just couldn't care about them the way I care.
I guess we should add the layer. He started drinking a lot for his first couple months, maybe a year. He stopped going to work.
Yeah, well, he said
that's when
he worked in like the 70s or 80s
IBM,
when he started working. Yeah, he worked at IBM.
Fucking IBM.
But he was like, they were much more lenient then, and they obviously his boss knew his wife had just died, so he just let him kind of work when he came in. Like he didn't get fired or anything. He was just like, he gave him basically a year to like grieve.
But even then, he was still like close to being fired. Yeah, But then fishing, it was like he needed to. And then, of course, Dan. One day he asks Dan.
Oh, yeah, I think they're literally standing around a coffee pot or something,
Yeah.
and he's like, just talking, like trying to make small
He said
talk.
he didn't want to talk to him, of course, like we said, because he didn't
Yeah,
want
he
to.
wanted to give him his space.
Yeah, and then eventually he's like, "Hey,
was-
you ever fished?" And
I
he
think-
said he had before.
I think he was talking. They were talking to another coworker, like
Probably
a
about
group, like
fishing.
3 people or something, and he was
I
telling.
think Dan might have related
Yeah,
first.
he tell him about the fish he caught, and he's like, "You do any fishing, Dan?" And he's like, "Oh, not since I went with my dad, like
Yeah.
whenever he was a kid or whatever."
And then, of course, that
He's
takes
like,
off.
and then he's like, he just suggests, he's like, "You should come with me one day, and we can go fishing." And then he does, and he says the first time him and Dan go fishing, they don't even talk to each other. They
Yeah.
just sit out there for like 6 hours, and he thinks like, "Oh, well, he came once," but then Dan was like, "All right, again next Saturday."
Yeah,
and
it
then
starts becoming a.
they slowly build that up into like an actual
And
friendship.
then, yeah, it starts becoming a real friendship. They don't talk much, of course. It's just about the fishing.
Yeah.
And then finally, Dan
the dinner scene.
shows up at his house,
Yeah.
drunk
For dinner.
already. Or I don't think, no, he invited him to his house
Yeah.
just to eat.
But
and
he
then,
shows up drunk.
and then he starts drinking more wine.
Yeah.
And
And
then
he's
he
like,
finally.
he's rambling about how much he hates his life and like
Yeah.
how much he misses his
Yeah.
wife and why
And that's when we hear the.
he's like philosophizing on why his wife died and it doesn't mean anything.
Isn't that when we hear the light story? I think.
Yeah, that's when he talks
when
about him
that.
sitting at the stoplight.
And then Abe doesn't even really offer any advice. He just
Well,
kind
he's
of lets
also
him get it
like,
off.
Jan's like basically blackout drunk. He's just letting
Yeah.
him spill it out, and then he falls asleep on Abe's
on his-
couch.
And then that's when the real thing happens, where it kind of alludes to everything, I guess, where Abe has his nightmare
Yeah,
of Marie in a dark water. Mary. Oh, there's no. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mary. Dark water, black water. He's fishing, and then he pulls out her fucking head,
One
which was.
of the hardest descriptions for me is when they kept saying they had golden eyes. Remember, he
I
says he
imagine
pulls
the
her out.
irises.
Yeah, I imagine like fish eyes, which is what it says. But it's just
Yeah.
hard to imagine that on a person, so that was a tough
I always
description
imagined
for
it
me.
as like, yeah, I guess I could have imagined as a fish. I just imagine it as gold irises. I don't know
Yeah.
why.
That makes sense.
But yeah, of course he pulls it out. I thought this is unnecessary, but I really wish he would have woken up screaming. I know it doesn't make sense, but I think it would have given a nice like depth to like the emotion, because he's never truly came out and just said how emotional he felt. He just drank or whatever. I thought it would have added a nice
Well,
with
yeah.
Dan.
And then winter comes around,
They can't
and
fish.
fishing season.
Whoa.
Fishing season ends, and that's when he says Dan really goes into it pretty bad, where he's like,
Yeah.
he says it was the same for him. Like the first year, he explains how you're
No,
in
it's
shock,
Dude.
and you're like waiting.
Oh,
for...
they say the second year is the worst.
yeah,
That's what
because he
they
said the first year you're like
shock.
in your brain is like imagining the person you lost is like on vacation or something, and they're gonna
Yeah.
come back.
You're
And
also
the
with
second year-
family.
Yeah, and the second year you realize
On
they're
the
never coming
holidays.
back, and then Dan gets worse. He's like I don't know how he's not fired, because they're already laying off people at IBM. It's around I think this is like early 90s.
I think
at this
things are
point.
starting to change or something.
Yeah,
in the
and it's just
company.
becoming more of like think of like modern day like Amazon, where like they have so many employees they only have to keep the best.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. They're just trimming the fat from their company. And Dan is apparently, before the loss of his wife, he's like a great worker. And
Yeah, also,
he's
Dan is
involved in a lot of
young.
projects. Yeah, he's also young.
Dan was young, a good worker, and of course, I imagine him being our age, late 20s, maybe.
I imagine him a little older because he had a wife and 2 kids.
I think he was
so,
30 actually.
Yeah,
Early 30s.
I was imagining 30,
I was imagining Abe like
45. I was saying
50,
45.
because he towards the end, of course.
Yeah. Well, towards the end, I imagine him
Retired.
in his like 60s.
He said he retired early.
Yeah.
That's why I was like, okay, maybe it's like late 50s. But yeah, so after that,
Well, Dan is almost getting fired, and he's kind of like expecting him to not go fishing with him anymore because he's in a really rough state.
and that next year,
But
or
he's
that
like,
next,
so when they catch trout, he's like, trout season in 2 weeks, right? And he's like,
yeah, I think it
and,
was trout.
and Abe's like, yep. And they set a date.
And they do the same, and they go on. I don't know how long before the diner scene.
That's the next scene.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
And then the diner scene.
They go to Howard's.
Dan wants to hit a new spot.
Yeah.
He thinks he might enjoy it.
Called what is it called?
Dutchman's Creek.
Dutchman's Creek.
But yeah, and then of course Howard owner?
Yeah. Well, he says he works in the kitchen, but I'm pretty sure it's his diner.
It's just like a guy that's there. Abe knows
Then
of
they
him.
go. Well, he's explaining how it's like. He's like, it's always busy on Saturdays in the morning because everybody that's going fishing is gonna get breakfast at Howard's.
Yeah.
And then he's like, there's no one there. And he's like, as soon as we get inside, it starts like pouring outside, like a monsoon. Can't even see through the rain. And Howard's like, while you're stuck in here, let me tell you a 90-page story.
Yeah.
You're in here.
And he, word for word.
Well, it says that, yeah, he tells the whole story, but then Abe says he goes home and he's like, I have to write this down. And he says while he's writing it down,
he could recount
stuff Howard didn't even tell him. Like,
Yeah.
he knows things that Howard didn't even tell him and he doesn't know how.
And it all, yeah, like you said in the beginning, it is Howard telling the story from the Reverend who was talking to Lottie.
Yeah.
Who Lottie heard the story from
her husband?
From Joseph?
Jacob. And then Jacob knows half the story from Rainer.
And of course,
which
Jacob
is Lottie's
was
dad.
a part of it.
And then Rainer hears part of the story from Cornelius.
Oh,
who
that's
was the
true.
old man at the beginning.
When did he didn't talk to Cornelius?
No, he didn't talk to him directly, but the sheriff tells him stories of Cornelius when he was younger.
Oh.
And like his rise to fame.
Oh.
Because it says at one point he becomes one of the richest people in the country. He's like a robber baron. He's like
Cornelius is, yeah, the most powerful.
Yeah, he's like, it's like Vanderbilt, Rockefeller.
Yeah,
then
he became one of those names.
Dort is his last name. But
yeah, and that was my least favorite part.
Oh yeah.
That the stupid guest, the doctor,
Yeah.
his wife. I was like, God, I don't care. The guest also didn't end up being relevant. Was it?
The guest was the fisherman.
Oh, was he the fisherman?
Yeah.
Oh. Damn.
You didn't get that?
Well, I assumed, but I was like, yeah, at the end when he was like, oh, the guest never ended up coming back, and I was like, oh, okay, he was a fisherman. But they never gave too much depth.
Well, they said the guest never left the house.
Oh, they'd only see him.
But the guest was in the house, but he was in like that dimension inside the house.
Right.
Where they had to they had to chop down the door.
Of course.
And suddenly they were in a forest.
Cornelius left the house to him in his will.
Yeah.
Because the fisherman revived his wife that passed away. Which is still, I never completely understood the whole reviving thing. I don't know about you. I didn't really get it. Like their fish, whatever.
It is Marie. It is Marie. Sorry,
Wow.
It is Marie. I was thinking, I was like, Marie sounds better. I think Mary is Italo's wife. The one who gets run over by the buggy.
That's Helen.
Oh, that is Helen.
Helen and George. Italo.
Oh yeah, Italo's just his neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, Helen and George. That was when it. Well,
yeah, I imagine them resurrecting as just like, not them. Like you just reanimate a corpse.
That's what I thought too.
It's just like it's not
fish.
Not really a zombie, but it's just kind of like got its own motives. It's not, you didn't bring back your wife, you just brought back her body.
Yeah.
It's not
and it just
really
has some
her.
kind of thing.
It has some kind of ulterior
What I
motive.
understand is, how did George find the fisherman to revive Helen, or how would he find his wife?
So George knew, I don't know, like I'm not exactly sure, but I believe George knew the sheriff, and he just knew the guest was a weird ass dude.
A doctor who had revived. Oh,
yeah,
that's true.
a doctor who had revived Cornelius's wife.
Yeah, so
and he's like, I wonder if he's still there, if he can, because it's like, the guest is said to be like over 100 years old at this point.
Yeah,
Because Cornelius was like 109 when he died.
Yeah, he's really old. He's one of the old. He was, one of the oldest.
That was a cool. Real quick, I'll get back to the guest, but that was my favorite description of someone dying ever. And it said the look on his face is as if he suddenly forgot he was supposed to do something, and then he dropped dead. And I was like, that's probably accurate. That's probably how you actually die. You're like, oh shit, something's wrong, and then you die immediately after.
Yeah.
So George goes to the dude. He's like, listen, my wife tried to
kill herself.
Did she try and kill herself?
It was It was
Was
marked
it
as
suicide?
suicide
Oh.
because she ran in front of the
Donkeys carrying a wagon. Like she ran in front of a wagon.
Yeah. And got trampled.
Yeah.
And they said it was suicide. I thought she just.
I thought she just
know.
walked out. Like she
Yeah, I
wasn't
thought
paying
she walked
attention.
out and wasn't paying attention and got run over. But
Yeah.
they said they marked it as a suicide.
Maybe it's just saying they marked it as suicide.
Maybe it's frowned upon.
You gotta
I
say
don't know.
something.
They said that like George might have been cheating. I think
Yeah.
That's what they said.
Well, yeah, and then Helen comes back, but it's like so creepy how they describe it. They said it's like you can see the bones under her skin aren't where they're supposed to be, and she's all like
She's
disheveled
lumpy.
and lumpy, and then she's just like hobbling around, and it's so weird. They just for like over a year they just have this undead woman hanging out in their town, just walking about, staying in their house,
So
screaming
basically,
at night.
How did it begin? It began with them seeing her in the house with George because George, his children were taken away. Not taken away. He leaves in the middle of the night, and the girls go over to Italio.
Yeah, that's so funny that he's the only Italian character,
Yeah.
and they named him Italo.
Yeah, so they go over to his house, and the girls, and they're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, our dad," and then he barges in. He's like, "Where are the girls?" And then they hear screaming, and I was like, this is about to get great. He like literally killed his children, but no, they were just screaming at their mother.
Yeah.
That was a fish person. I don't know, and yeah, and it felt like she was almost drowning while still being
And
like water.
I really like that thing that like she knows everyone's secrets.
That was interesting.
That was really cool because like they have that one random dude
Yeah,
who comes to her
to get rid of the body.
Yes, he's supposed to get rid of the body, and then he tells him that his wife is having sex
cheating.
with his boss.
Yeah,
And then he just goes
shoots everyone.
He kills both of them with a shotgun and then himself.
Yeah.
Um
I thought he just went mad.
Yeah, that's what I thought at
Yeah.
first, but then they explained it.
But
and I
they
was
told
like,
Italio's wife.
yeah,
She said something through the door,
yeah.
and she like broke down, and we never found out.
Yeah, we never find out that one. We never find out Rainer's either, which I'm assuming she just knows the secret about his partner.
Wilhelm.
Yeah.
He's
But
a
we'll get to
professor.
that later. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and then I actually really enjoyed. There were bits and pieces. Like I said, it was dense. It was hard to get through sometimes. But certain moments, like the interaction between George's children and then Italio taking over their kids, that was like nice.
Just like
And
a
then-
real life stuff.
Yeah, and like the wife was fighting off Helen, and that's when she said
Yeah.
the secret. And then I don't think it was later on. She tried to get in again.
Yeah.
Freaking
The scariest part
went
with
through.
Helen is with jeez, I always forget the names. With Lottie. When she's in the bakery and Helen comes into the closet
that
with
was
her.
chilling.
And she's
yeah.
like trapped in there with Helen.
She starts. So basically, Helen only communicates by like gargles. They'll say
Gargles.
like she'll say like a phrase,
Yeah.
something like that. But then most of it's
Well, it
just
says
like
that she is like gargling, but the person she's speaking to can understand it.
oh,
It's like a secret language she's speaking to them.
yeah, and that just happens. Of course, Lottie notes that it smells like rotten flesh, and then
Yeah.
she goes into
She turns around and she's like I imagine like a thin pantry, and she's at the very back, and
That's
Helen
exactly
is just
what I imagine.
yeah, and Helen
imagine
is
the
just
door closed.
yeah.
She's like, and she like creeps around to look at her, holding the almonds to her. He went really in depth about the almonds.
The
being
almond slivers
close to. I held the almonds so tight. I was like, damn.
Gotta protect these valuable almonds.
Yeah, and then that was like a weird little interaction. Then of course, that's when you get the true. It was still vague to me. I didn't understand it, but like the blackness of the water,
Yeah.
and then she's looking onto
Oh,
it.
that was so
and it was
cool.
herself.
So she
Oh.
goes into like it's not a dream state, but Helen's making her like vision herself like floating above an ocean with
bobbing heads.
thousands of heads just like bobbing up out of the surface, and one of them is talking about how much it wants to fuck Italo, the Italian dude, and she realizes it's her own head, and she's
So
like,
it's talking about killing her sisters.
yeah.
So
and-
those are the secrets, supposedly. Which
yeah, they're all the heads are whispering secrets.
that don't
Like-
even make sense.
Like her mom, Clara, is talking about how she wished she would have
The
slept with
handyman or
with-
whatever
slept
the hell.
with, yeah, that dude.
the hot.
She was like, look at his nose.
Yeah, and
That
she's
was
like,
funny.
all those times he came into the house, I should have brought him
Yeah.
upstairs.
Um,
That part was weird though, because it didn't really make sense. Like your dark secrets usually isn't about killing your sisters, but I think it was recounting everything you've experienced in your life
yeah. Well,
and
it's
thoughts
like
you've had.
she said it's not even thought she had. It's like her subconscious. It's
Yeah.
like
I think that was little, but
yeah.
of course it's
Well,
exaggerated.
it's like she realized it was the truth. She couldn't even lie to herself
but yeah.
and say what
So basically,
she was fantasizing about the neighbor and about killing her sisters and how
Yeah.
she missed being the only one her parents cared about.
and then
stuff
after
like
that, she goes into a coma of sorts, or she's just like kind of crying, not
yeah,
really
she's
talking.
she's like inconsolable for a few days.
Yeah, and then that's when Rainer starts doing magic.
Rainer's like Rainer.
All right.
Well, okay, Rainer learned how to be a stonemason in 2 days. It's not out of
From to be a
it's not
magician?
preposterous that he's not a magician. I don't know. He's a wizard.
Man,
he's like,
he's like, I got this.
he's like, oh yeah, I got a book.
Yeah,
And
I love how like
Clara's like, you better read
you
that
better.
book.
She's like, you better fix this. It's like, he's like, this is a dark evil. And I was like, what is
So he
happening?
pulls out his magic book.
Starts doing.
He starts
Figures.
doing runes. He traps Helen in her house
He's doing jutsu
by
and shit.
carving runes into the house. I guess like trap her.
Yeah.
And then the squad, the boys, which is
Tayo.
Rainer, Jacob, Andrea, Italo, and Angelo, they all steal some axes from work. And they're
And he
like,
carves
we're going.
a rune in
Yeah, he
it.
carves runes into the axes. And he's like, boys, we're going on a midnight
We're going
adventure.
out.
So they go out into the forest. They go to Cornelius's old mansion.
The fisherman.
Yeah, well, Cornelius isn't the fisherman. The guests,
The fisherman.
Yeah.
They're going to see the fisherman.
which I thought was really cool.
I thought it was
the
a great-
transition. They
Yeah.
chop down the door of the house, and inside is
Well,
a forest.
The water was a huge thing. Of the forest being
I
flooded.
think that's after they go into the house.
No, it was before.
Oh,
Because they were
before?
walking up to the
yeah,
lion
yeah.
door. And because,
They're walking in the forest,
and
and
it starts,
suddenly
the water starts rising
Yeah.
over. And then Jacob sees something. And it starts dragging him out. And then Rainer
he sees
does a
like
spell.
yeah,
or-
Rainer
I don't know.
casts fire. Now he sees like figures swimming.
white
Like
figures.
I imagine like they're in like a forest path.
That's what I
And then it's
imagine.
like evergreens, but there's a layer like they're
I'm just imagining
underwater,
water.
and there's like 2 walls of water,
I imagine
and there's figures swimming in the
they
water.
said it like Moses
Yeah.
parting the red, which
Yeah.
was helped me visualize it. That's how I was visualizing it anyway.
Yeah,
But I just imagine it rising, and then eventually they get to the lion door, where Rainer
it
does
has
a
a
water
lion's head on the
jutsu,
door.
and then and then
Yeah, he throws his shuriken at
he
it.
cracks it open with the force of the
the thousand
magician.
suns.
And then that's when it gets like
then they're
Jumanji style.
they're
and
suddenly, like-
it's just a freaking
they're suddenly on a beach, right?
well, not yeah. I mean,
Well, they have to walk to
yeah.
it. Yeah.
See, I not hated. I know this is typical. I think he tried too much to give life to the journey of the hills.
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
like, we walked into the house. There was a hill. It was so steep. Then we go to the second hill. I was like, what are we?
Yeah, I felt like I was reading The Hobbit for a
Yeah, I
second.
was like, what are we
what is-
going over? Until eventually,
They come over
red
a crest.
beach.
They see like I imagine just like a really rocky beach. Like not
I'm
much
imagining-
sand, just
So
like big
I was
pebbles.
confused. Did you imagine the rocks on the water preventing people to go in,
I
or
imagine it.
behind?
I imagine it as like a cliff. Like okay, the beach is here, and they're standing on a cliff
They go
above
down.
the beach, and then there's also big spires of rock coming out of the water, which aren't actually rock. That's the Leviathan that God created when He created the world. I must have missed that part of the Bible. I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
I must have missed that in Genesis.
And the sand was red, or like maybe that's just like the sun. I don't know. They
well, it was all at
mentioned-
night, so I guess it just was red.
Was it at night?
Yeah, they go do it overnight because they get
Well,
back and they have
but
to go
in
to
the
work in the
place
morning.
itself.
Oh,
I don't know.
It never describes it. I imagine it at night. But
I imagine it like sunset,
Oh, okay.
like because you could see everything, and then of course the great Lovecraftian monster,
yeah.
which never really
Which
mattered to me.
I mean, it was a cool visual. It's
imagine a
it's
huge mountain.
It's
I don't know.
Jacob, and he's like looking at spires of like giant mountains coming out of the ocean, and he realizes they're like scales and parts of the Leviathan coming out,
Yeah.
and not actually, rock formations.
I did think.
And
so,
he's like chained up to thousands of ropes in a circle.
That was cool.
Yeah.
That's when I was like, damn. The fact that he's called the Fisherman and it's the biggest catch was so cool, in my opinion, where he's just like, he has it. I don't know how he had it.
He's a really good fisherman.
Yeah, he hooked them on his magic ropes.
Well, it's ropes weaved with hooks in it.
Yeah.
Like the fibers of the rope are partially made of hooks.
That's what I imagined too. And I think the rocks were had a threshold that was being held.
Yeah.
Because I imagined at first like a round rock, and I was like, how's a rock? How they have and then of the how they depict it, the ropes are as thick as a big what's the word? I would say buff.
A Brazilian woman.
A buff man's arm.
Okay.
And yeah, stuff like that. And
he's like, we gotta cut these ropes, boys.
And right when they get to the beach, the fisherman's like, "What you doing?" Right?
Yeah.
He's like,
"Hey,
why are you here?" That's the only thing he says right in the beginning. He's like, "What are you doing here?" And then it's like, and then they noted Rainer ignored him, and we started chopping. And then
boys started chopping.
Then the fisherman started doing a magic spell.
So how did Andrea get possessed?
It was water bending, bro.
Did he make Andrea swallow a bunch of his water?
He cut open his throat.
Okay.
And then he was dead, and then the water went in because he was water bending, blood bending, and then
And then
Rainer was like,
Andrea started attacking Angelo because he was like,
he's trying
to stop them from cutting the ropes.
Yeah.
And then
turned into a fishman, whatever.
Jacob sticks his axe into his collarbone and kills him again.
So he
kills Angelo, who was attacking.
He was about to.
No, he kills Andrea, who was attacking Angelo.
In the middle of doing that, they were trying to hold him down, and then, as Rainer's fighting the fisherman, he momentarily loses his grasp on his powers that make him into a fishman. And the last second, who's the guy that died? Angelo.
No, Andrea.
He comes back to, his eyes turn brown.
Yeah.
And as he does that, Jacob hacks him in the freaking skull. I don't know.
Oh, well, he hits him
throat.
Here.
Yeah, because it was like a
down.
huge.
Yeah.
But at the end, he was normal during that phase, so he kind of just.
It's not his fault.
Yeah.
The axe was already swinging.
As he depicts it, he was like, I was in the middle of the throw and it was too late.
Yeah.
He hacked down.
So after that, Italo cuts the last rope.
Well, Rainer and the fisherman are waterbending.
Oh yeah, they're having their. I imagine exactly as in Order of the Phoenix, when Voldemort and Dumbledore fighting in the bank, and he puts him in that ball of water, and he spins Voldemort around.
Yeah, I literally just imagine them going in circles with each a water.
Well, he said one of his hand was a ball of light that dimmed him when the light touched him.
Yeah.
And then the other one, he was waterbending.
Yeah. And then eventually, when they snapped the last rope, it kicked back and Rainer dropped down in time, but the fisherman didn't.
He caught him.
From then on, it hooked him.
It hooked him, and then the fish is the Leviathan is kind of loose and drags him into the ocean.
Yeah, and it would have happened regardless because you can't fight it in the hooks. And he was getting dragged along the rocks, the jagged.
Yeah, and then Rainer. Then I love how Jacob is like, "What about all these other ropes?" And Rainer's like,
"You could go."
Rainer's like, "I think that's enough for one night." He's like, "If you want to go, I'm not gonna stop you." But
he said we set him back enough. Times.
Which is apparently about 100 years.
Yeah, and of course the whole world starts collapsing.
Yeah, I imagine it as he just he broke the spell that held this place open in reality.
Yeah.
And if they didn't leave, they would be trapped there.
Yeah.
The portal would close, basically.
Yeah. Because the fishermen no longer had the power to hold it up. And then, of course, they had the running scene. They run out. And
this man,
and then Rainer promises Jacob his 12-year-old daughter's hand in marriage. I don't know how old.
Running.
I don't know how old Lottie was. It was so weird. He's like, "What about my daughter?"
Well, he's like, my legs turned to stone. I couldn't move anymore. And he's like, "What about Lottie?" He's like, "Oh, I got."
You want some of that?
He's like, "I can move. I can run."
Yeah, they never talk about age at all, in terms of actual. But eventually, of course, Lottie and Jacob do end up together.
Yeah, they make it out, and they say, they go back to that. They have a future flashback where it's like Rainer as an old man, and they go into the forest, and they see Dutchman's Creek. They see the black
Yeah.
water coming.
That wasn't for a while. That was after it kind of closes, I think.
Yeah,
Either way,
yeah,
I
I
mean,
was
it
way in the
happened.
future, but
Yeah.
then he was like, and then that's like after Jacob and Lottie have been married.
Yeah, so they
and
talk
stuff.
about their family a little bit. Just where everyone went. Gretchen and her other sister. And of course, Lottie gets with Jacob just so she could hear the story. She said that like twice.
Yeah.
Where she's like, it's not the reason I got with him, but... and yeah, it just depicts everyone's lives, and then Rainer's senile. Or no, he has Alzheimer's.
Rainer works for the reservoir.
Yeah, he ends up
which
getting a new job.
Their town that they lived in is flooded. They create like basically a man-made dam to supply water to New York. That's why their town is being flooded. And Rainer works for the reservoir that like takes care of the dam, so he can monitor and see if the fisherman is back yet. And at the end of Rainer's life, he's like, oh, he is back, because they see the black water leaking out.
Yeah.
But he's basically going insane at this point. He's senile.
Yeah. And they
He's like,
say...
there's nothing more we can do.
And once again, I mean, I don't usually care. I would like to know ages of Rainer. How they say it, Lottie and Jacob was their age when the events were happening.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I imagine them to be like late 30s, early 40s or something.
Yeah.
So I'm imagining Rainer to be like mid 60s, late 60s.
Because his
getting
wife is still
Alzheimer's.
fine.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it's still 1930?
Yeah.
30.
Yeah.
No.
No.
It had to be earlier because it was...
I think it's like 1900 something. But then Lottie dies in like 1930 or 60 or something.
No, Jacob dies in 1955, and then Lottie lives a little bit further past that.
Okay. Because she tells the story to Howard.
Reverend.
The Reverend, and the Reverend tells it to Howard. Right.
I don't know why the Reverend was... I don't even know who the Reverend... I forgot that part.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, but...
But the important part...
Yeah, go back to the main...
We get to find out why Rainer is a magician.
Yeah, that was fucking weird.
Yeah, it was weird.
He went to an underground city or
Rainer,
something.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know.
That's very Lovecraft. They do that all the time.
Okay.
But yeah, Rainer. It goes back to when he was still in Germany, and he's like this up and coming professor. He's kind of famous. And then him and his friend, what was his name?
Wilhelm or something.
Wilhelm.
It makes sense
something.
because they're German.
Yeah,
I'm
Wilhelm.
guessing. It was his other professor,
Basically, his like
competitor,
his academic
friend.
rival
Yeah.
at the university.
And they work together too.
They're the same as J.R.R. Tolkien. They're philologists. They study words and language.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's what he was.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And they discover this language that's like super old, and it's like, oh, this is a new form of Greek or whatever that we didn't know about. It wasn't Greek, but it was whatever the language was.
Yeah. Or something.
And then they start learning how to read it, and they discover it has powers when you read it.
Whatever. And then they figure dark, and then light.
They like
light.
join this like cult of people that also
Who know
read
more
it.
than them.
Yeah, and they're
they
like,
lead 'em.
well, that was where like the betrayal comes in.
Why?
Because Rainer says they have to take it to somewhere in the city.
But he didn't really. I mean, so yeah, they bring him to this underground city with people that I imagine have that stereotypical.
Yeah, a plague mask.
Yes, and they have to get the stone.
Yeah.
Stone.
I don't remember.
They have to get the ring.
They have to get the magical ring.
Yeah, and then they go down, and then Wilhelm takes it, but you're supposed to wrap it 3 times in cloth.
Yeah, or it will kill you.
Yeah, so before that, they say that before, Wilhelm, the next day after they do this voyage, he dies in the middle of his class he's giving.
Yeah, he like throws up the black water or whatever and then disintegrates.
Literally turns into dust.
Yeah, and Wilhelm is like, I knew he was supposed to wrap it, but he was being so arrogant.
Rainer said he knew he was supposed to wrap it, but he said, don't be a granny. And he just took it.
Yeah, and he was like, I was so upset by his arrogance, I just let him take it.
And he's like, let it fall on you. We could probably look at the exact quote.
Yeah, well, it's not that important.
Yeah, and then
his friend dies, and then the university, I assume, discovers he's in the dark arts or whatever, and that's what gets him shunned.
Yeah.
And that's why he has to move to America, and that's why...
He became a stonemason.
Yeah, he became a stonemason.
And he continued to practice the arts.
Fisherman, in the secrets.
He's
secretly a wizard the whole time.
Yeah, and then... So basically that ties back into when they're at the creek, and they found that the fisherman is back, because they start seeing visions. And then that's when he kind of says this whole story to Jacob. And then he dies a few years later.
And then finally, that is the end of the flashback. And we learn... and then we learn what happens to Dan and Abe when they go to Dutchman's Creek, which is where the black water from the fisherman under the reservoir seeps up from.
Yeah. And they do the same thing. Well, after they hear the story that we had just finished, they say it's crazy. Dan still wants to go. And they go.
Well, Dan knows.
Yeah, he knows
the river can
vaguely.
revive people.
Yeah, vaguely. His grandpa saw
his grandma, who had been dead for like 9 years,
or something.
at Dutchman's Creek. And Dan doesn't know the extent. He doesn't know the fisherman or the evil or anything.
Yeah, of course. He just knows the vague.
Yeah, he's like, oh, I gotta go.
I think he describes it very well. Once again, it's like a monsoon happening. And I heard like the river's like literally going, or the creek is going crazy. And I think that's cool. Like how they depict it. Like I imagine just like, he said it was like, it couldn't be more than 13 feet across.
Yeah.
But it was like,
I imagine like
all the power.
A rapid, but a deep rapid. Like it's not supposed to be moving that hard.
Why would you even fish in that to begin with? Anyway, I digressed. And then
trout fishing's crazy.
And then Dan goes down the stream a little bit, and then they start fishing.
Yeah, well, they have an argument.
Yeah,
because he knows that Dan is lying.
He was like,
about where he found
bullshit.
out.
Tell me the real reason.
Yeah, and Dan is like,
yeah,
I know Rainer was a wizard or whatever. I don't know what he said. No, but and he's just like, I know Dan's upset, but I'm not going to push the issue. I'm just gonna let him do his thing.
He's grieving.
As long as he's in ice shot, I know he's safe and he's fine.
Yeah, and then of course, they go back to they're fishing now. Abe gets a big hook.
Yeah.
And
pulls up a cuttlefish.
He's having struggle. He's struggling with it, and he gets it back. I like how I like how he wrote this, where it's like a true scene, where it's like I imagine like he's on the ground. Oh, I got a big catch. Yeah. He's like Abe, and he's like, oh, I bet it's crazy. And he turns around, and it's a big penis on and it's a human's face on.
Yeah, I imagine it as like that fish. I always forget their names. It's like a steelhead or something.
Yeah.
It's a fish with human teeth, but the fish that he catches, he says it looks like fish skin stretched over a human skull.
Which is gross.
Yeah, very gross. And he's like...
And as you can imagine, he's kind of...
He's like, oh,
what's going on, Dan? And then after that, Dan goes on his little spiel about why he knows.
Yeah, he tells him about his grandpa's journal, which we had previously discussed.
Yeah, and then he's all right, we should probably head down over there to see what's happening. And then he's like, Dan, we just saw this, and then of course...
Dan, Abe, as they're journeying, they say they're going another hill. They're going up a hill, and Abe is old and fat, or whatever. He's just old, and he's like falling behind. Dan pressed the hill before him, and then suddenly, Abe sees Marie. Like, I imagined her as like
a porcelain version of them.
I think it's just white. It's just pale. Like she hasn't seen sunlight because she's a fish. No, I just imagine it as like two trees.
And guess what, guys?
And he looked. No. Marie there's like two pine trees or something, and she just like steps out from behind one. And he's like, "Oh my God, it's Marie."
And they start talking, and
he's like, "Jesus, I have to have sex right now."
She starts grasping him, and then she starts moaning.
It's so weird.
Why would you see your dead wife after
10 years?
Maybe more than 10 years.
Yeah, maybe more than 10, at least 12.
And he's like, "Oh my God, we gotta do it."
She's like, so he describes how like she's doing all the things they would do.
Fishy.
Fishy. So she's like giving him all the hints that she used to when she was alive, when they were like having sex or whatever. And then he's like, he has sex with her, which he describes her as like ice cold.
Yeah.
That was another point I laughed. He's like, I was warm enough for the both of us.
And then
why is it going into so much detail about this?
And then after he's done and his pants are down, he's like looking at the stars, and he looks over, and it's I don't think it's a fish. He like depicts it as like a corpse, like a gross. Like,
I imagined it as like she looks like the fish he caught a few minutes ago.
That's what I thought. I thought he was having sex with the fish he caught for a second.
I also thought
it became sentient, and I was like, damn. And And then they go on this quest to go.
They see a homeless dude walking through the woods.
I don't know what that was.
That was the fisherman.
Oh,
Yeah.
why was she screaming at him?
Because they don't explain it, but it's the fisherman from earlier in history. And she's screaming at him because he's not in his lair. He's in real space. He needs to go back and get back to work.
You looked that up?
That's just what's in the book.
What?
Yeah.
When did it say that?
After she yells at him.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't pay much attention to that part.
It's not important. It's not like they go into detail. But yeah.
And that's when
and
all the
then they
huge
go to, like,
cattle are right there.
They go to like this marble palace kind of thing.
The sacred cows.
Yeah. And I don't understand how he gets transported to the beach. They're in the palace made of giant
I think
marble
they keep
columns.
walking. I think it's all this. Like, they just keep walking.
Okay,
And then,
they just keep walking past
yeah,
it.
and then they find it. I thought that was a nice. It felt reminiscent, obviously. I was like, oh wow, okay, we're kind of.
Yeah.
Which you assume already.
Mhm.
It comes full circle. He depicts it the same way, beach stuff happening, but he doesn't notice the creature at first. I don't think, like the big Leviathan.
No,
he
I
said
don't
he's
think
just
so.
walking.
He's walking on the beach and he's looking for Dan.
Yeah, and the fisherman's like strung up.
Yeah, he's like tied to a
Still.
rock, I imagine.
Has
As
no
like
power or.
yeah, his power's like weakening. I think he's dying because of his fight he had with the Leviathan with Raynor.
Yeah.
Probably took a lot out of him to get him back for
And
strength.
of course, Dan is.
Dan
sitting-
is like
chilling with his
Dan's
family.
like, Abe, I just had sex with my wife and kids. Did you have sex with Marie?
Because yeah, I know he noted. Of course, he said he was like, and there was Dan, clothes all torn up, and I
Yeah.
was like, damn, my man just went to town, and then
Yeah, and Sophie's there with
that
the
was
twins.
wild. What happens next?
Well, we'll get to it in a second. But yeah, Dan is like, it's like, Abe, the fisherman brought our families back, and Abe is just like, Dan, we got to get out of here. What is this place? And he's
Yeah.
like, it's not real. And then Dan is like, real is where my family is. So wherever they are is where I'm staying, because he's still stricken with loss from his family. He's still in his second year of grieving. Or
Yeah.
whatever. And he's
so-
like, if we offer our strength to the fisherman, which it goes into the fisherman's backstory, which I thought was stupid. I wish they wouldn't have explained that.
yeah, I don't really care. They just say that how he got the knowledge from the Hungarian.
He
or
was
he
Hungarian.
the Hungarian?
He was Hungarian. His wife and kids were killed in some kind of invasion, and he spent his life trying to learn how to bring them back.
and then he goes to
he reads a
guy.
bunch of ancient books.
And one guy had a
figures out-
book
Yeah.
that had the secrets to the fish. I don't know, the Leviathan
He had
lore.
the first edition Bible that still talked about Leviathan before they cut that part.
Yeah, but whatever. That happens.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, Dan's trying to convince Abe, of
Which
course.
I think Dan's tricking him the whole time. I don't think Dan is ever going to sacrifice himself. I think he just wants to kill Abe so he doesn't have to kill himself, and the fisherman can use his body for power.
Oh, duh. That's why they said it. Remember Raynor? He's like, this'll do for now, unless we wanted to get into sacrifices.
Oh, yeah.
That's why. So he was just going to sacrifice. Basically, they get into an altercation, and then Dan's children eat his legs.
Well, his wife eats his head.
Yeah, but the kids attack first. I was like, I thought Abe was about to fuck up them kids.
Oh,
but,
yeah, when they're like, I'm surrounded.
Yeah.
I was like,
He was, like, behind him
I
and
know
to
he
the
doesn't
sides.
die because the book is written from him
his-
in the future.
Yeah,
So I was like, is he just 1v4 these people?
but yeah, so basically he cuts
Dan,
them.
Yeah, he
He
cuts
cuts
Dan.
them and blood.
He like takes his little fishing knife.
Yeah, which I didn't really
I
understand.
think it was like a
how
box
worked.
cutter.
I was imagining like something that extended out,
Imagine like a box cutter. You just like push
Maybe.
it all the way out. And he slices Dan across the chest.
and he's bleeding, and his
and then
kids want to taste it.
He describes earlier his wife Sophie and the twins have like shark maws, like giant mouths attached to their faces.
Fish.
Yeah.
Fish mouth.
And they like basically smell blood in the water, and they're like about to eat this dude.
Yeah, and they just start eating them.
Yeah, they go and they say he just sees the look of horror on Dan's face.
That's just
He realizes
wife
he's
eats
gonna
his
be
face.
eaten by his family,
yeah,
and his wife just chomps down on his head,
yeah.
and he squirms for a bit, and then he's dead.
So Abe runs away.
Well, I think the fisherman basically lets him get away because he has Dan's strength now. And
yeah,
he's a little bit stronger. So I guess if the fisherman kills somebody, he like gains their mortality.
Yeah, and either way, I mean, he does. They do follow him because he said at first no one was following him, but then Marie was like pulling on his leg, which I thought for a second, like later on, there's a lot of obviously he runs for about 15 pages.
Yeah.
And then Marie's like holding him underwater. I thought for a second I was like, oh, she's gonna help him. But I think she was just grabbing his leg to pull him down.
Yeah.
So he kicks her in the face, and he keeps going.
And he's stuck in the stream in Dutchman's Creek.
Yeah, with the rapids.
Yeah.
So he's like all fucked up. Of course.
He's like basically drowning. He miraculously washes up on shore.
Yeah.
Some teenagers
broken arm.
who were experimenting with LSD find him on the shore.
Goes to the hospital.
Which I thought that part was so stupid. That he changes his story, and the detectives are like, yeah, we'll take that. We'll go with that.
See, because
at first he tells them the truth.
Yeah, they literally said it. He was like belligerent, obviously just going off. And he's like, oh, I decided to give them a more realistic story. I was like,
you can't just.
It actually makes sense because he was crazy before.
But he's the
after
number.
It's been a
he
few
would
days,
obviously be the number one suspect.
Yeah,
I don't think they would just let him go.
Yeah,
like, I don't know. Anyway, I just didn't find that part convincing. But basically, he's like, yeah, Dan. It was raining. He must have just slipped in the same as me, but he didn't make it. And they never recover Dan's body. They never find it. And Abe, after all this happens, his boss is like, either you retire or I have to fire you. So he basically gets a severance package, gets to retire early, and he tries to go fishing again, but he has like PTSD. And every time he goes, he just can't get out of his truck, go fishing.
Yeah. And it just goes on like that for a little bit until he gets some next door neighbors that move in. And he starts watching the little girl walking around. I think that's what I saw.
I think that's what I read.
Someone moves in next door, and then he notices the little girl is going to the stream with a fishing pole, and he gets excited, so he takes out his binoculars to look at her and make sure she's fishing, you know?
He's just making sure her casting is really good.
I mean, he's just watching her.
He's just watching her through his kitchen
for hours, he says.
It specifically says he makes sure no one can see him.
He specifically says he sits there and watches for hours. Yeah. She tries to figure it out, making sure she's safe. But they make it nice because...
Yeah, he talks to her dad.
Yeah.
And he's like...
and he, of course, throw in, he's like, I'm aware I'm an old man trying to get involved with this family.
We made it sound creepy, but it's not in the book. He's just like, I noticed your daughter keeps going to the stream. He's like...
I used to fish.
He's like, I used to be a fisherman myself. If you guys want to know... He's like, I know all the creeks around here. If you guys need any information about where to catch pike or whatever...
And, of course, it builds up. They start interacting more.
They go fishing together.
They eventually invite him over, yada, yada.
And then they have a hurricane that comes through.
That was cool.
Yeah, they have a hurricane that comes through. The family
leaves.
Is from, I think they're from Indiana or something.
Oh my God.
I forgot where they're from.
Dang it. I think it was like Montana, Michigan.
Yeah, I think it's Montana. I think you're right.
Yeah, and then of course they're in New York.
They leave. Yeah, the story takes place in New York. They leave. They go back home.
So he takes care of the house just to make sure.
Yeah, he's like, I'll watch your guys' house. It starts flooding really bad. It says like his yard looks like a pond or a lake. Like it's just completely covered. Fish in it. He's like, my house is on a little hill. And it's basically...
So he's good.
Yeah, it's like basically water everywhere but his house and the neighbor's house. He's like, I had to trudge through, what is it, like waist deep water?
Knees, something like that.
To go check, make sure their house isn't flooded.
And then of course, well, not of course, the power cuts off.
Yeah.
Which it hadn't turned off the whole time, he notes. So he tries to cook without power. And then the big...
Yeah, he's cooking eggs outside on like a propane stove. And
the door slams.
The door, like I imagine him on like a porch.
Yeah,
and
like
they have a slam door.
Yeah,
and
that's what I imagine.
The screen door like slams shut, and he's like, not cash money. So he goes inside and he's grabbing some Pam for the eggs, like some non-stick spray. And he looks up and it's Abe in his house.
Dan.
With golden eyes. And
we keep getting Dan and Abe mixed up. It's because it's 3 letters.
Yeah, sorry.
Dan is in the archway.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, man. He's like, what you doing?
He's like, I saw you looking at that girl.
What's up with that? You know? That was actually cool. I didn't expect that, honestly. Because he was conscious. Like, he was aware for the first time. It was different from Marie talking to him, I thought.
Yeah,
it was like,
Marie seemed more like...
Saying like
she wasn't a person. She was like an instrument of the fisherman.
Yeah.
She was like,
and it wasn't like Helen, where she said phrases. Dan was,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Dan was full on talking
He had
to
his
him.
head back.
Yeah, he was full on talking. He's like,
Yeah.
and at first he didn't blame him. And he's like, it was your fault.
But he's like, now the fisherman needs your power or your strength or whatever. And he's like,
I thought I'd stop by.
and he's like, actually, Dan, flamethrower.
Yeah, so he was the power's out.
He lit candles around the house
He somehow angles the pan to
spray and catch Dan on fire, and apparently that's. You feel good? Yeah. Apparently that's too much. The fisherman can't handle one of his servants being lit on fire. Dan jumps into the water, which he notices now, even though it's dark outside. He's like, the water is pitch black, and he looks out and he's like, he sees heads bobbing in his yard.
Well, no.
Like
so he the what? God, what's the word? The guards. What's the military? When you're like flooding in on a storm, people come to save you. So they come in and they're like, "Hey, would you like us to take you away since everything's flooding?" And he gets on their boat. And
no. He sees after he lights Dan on fire. He looks outside and he sees all the heads bobbing in the water. He sees bodies in the water. And he goes upstairs and locks the door.
You're right.
He puts his bed and dresser against the door.
And then
in the morning, the National Guard or Coast Guard, I don't know who comes for New York flooding.
Coast Guard, there you go.
They come and they're like, "Do you want us to take you out of your house because the area's all flooded?" And he's like, "Yes." And he leaves.
Then he goes into the water and he notices the bodies.
Yeah.
And he notices Marie.
Yeah, he sees Marie as one of the
two little fish children.
Yeah.
That have his mom's nose.
Yeah. I didn't know what that.
That's the end.
Is that supposed to be?
Children.
He never had children though.
Huh?
Oh,
from
having
fish.
sex. I really didn't catch that part.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, his mom was involved with the fisherman.
I was like, really? They had to add that? So he had fish children. So they could get pregnant? Weird thing to end the book off.
Rainer was casting fireballs.
That's
what do you mean?
true. He didn't get any cool powers. Abe just impregnated a fish.
He's like, I don't need magic. I'll just use Pam non-stick spray.
But yeah, I mean, that was literally that was almost a word for word fucking recounting.
Well, you just kind of have to break it down because so much that happens in such a short story. I mean, it's not really short. It's almost 300 pages, but it's still like, it's not like we read an 800-page book. It's a lot happens in this little
that's another thing. Every page is important.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate because of how dense the rough spots were. But you really did need all the information to really get a full scope of it. Like, that's unfortunate. The flashback was important. So you couldn't do without it. I just don't think it was the best way to maybe do this story.
Yeah, I think
it makes you not care.
I know we didn't write the book.
We can't write either. We're not, well, Tyler writes, but I'm not a writer at all. I don't care to write.
Like, I'm not gonna like say I'm a professional writer or anything, but that's like the main criticism most people have of the book is that the flashback takes up 2/3 of the book in the middle.
Yeah.
So,
which is unique, but the problem with it, you forget Dan and Abe are there. And you almost don't care.
The issue I have with it is that I like Dan and Abe so much.
I like them a lot.
I like reading about them. I wish the flashback was shorter and we get to spend more time with Dan and Abe. Even if it's just like them fishing and maybe a couple spooky things happen, and before they go to Dutchman's Creek, I just want to spend more time with Dan and Abe and further flesh out their characters.
Yeah, and it's rough because obviously we're not going to offer any criticism of how to do it better. This story, it had to have been done like this for it to work.
Yeah.
But it was just weird to begin with.
Yeah,
Like,
I think the only way, like if you want to keep this level of detail, you would just have to make it longer if you want more Dan and Abe.
Yeah,
you just have to add on to the
I
story.
could not have read this anymore. That's the great, like you just said, this is a short book. If it would have been any longer, I don't know if I would have been able to make it unless he did it differently. What if that flashback was like 200 pages?
Yeah, that'd be insane.
I mean, if it all flowed the same way the last like 40 pages did, maybe.
Yeah, because once you get back to Dan and Abe, it started just going.
Yeah,
it's way
but
faster.
the problem is, you were attached to Dan and Abe because of how much it got you.
Yeah.
The only person I cared about was Rainer.
Yeah.
He was, because he's a wizard, but everyone else, They gave no flesh to
Yeah,
it.
I mean, you learn
It was
Lottie.
weird.
You kind of learn about her.
Yeah.
But you don't like care about her like you do Dan and Abe, because
Yeah, exactly. And Raider, yeah.
you really get into their psyche.
I did like Italio, whatever.
Yeah.
I like the whole interactions, but it just took you out of it and brought you back into it.
It felt like a different story. Like
Yeah.
it was.
Disjointed, but it had to have gone together.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about a little bit, like since we've gone through the whole book. I want to see. Imagine like we put you and me into some of these scenarios and see how we would react to it, because as good as the book was, I just don't think I would have behaved like Dan and Abe did, or even like Lottie, or not like Rainer and the crew with the axes.
The boys.
Like, I don't think if I saw my dead wife step out from behind a tree. One, I don't think I'm having. I don't think I'm having sex with. Oh no, I agree with that point. No, I'm not having sex with her within 2 minutes. But also, I think I'm just leaving. I don't think I'm speaking to her. I think I'm out of there.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm talking to her.
Yeah, I mean, it goes on to the usual issue with horror. Not issue, that's just how it is.
Yeah.
It's not realistic. It's usually not how people would normally react. Because I would also just leave. Oh, that's another chilling part we didn't. It's not that relevant, but when he just meets Marie, and he is hollering with such emotion, that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Like, he was like, he said
he's like weeping.
He's like, I've cried before.
Yeah.
After she died, of course, but seeing her there, the rapids, and my voice was carrying over with so much emotion. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I wouldn't have gone to begin with.
Also, if I see Dan in my house, I'm just going feral. I'm just attacking. I don't think I have enough presence of mind to know I can make an impromptu flamethrower with the non-stick spray and a candle I have lit.
It's also not fair because, I wouldn't have gone to begin with in the rain.
Yeah.
Howard didn't even have to tell me the story. I'm just not going.
Dan
is being unrealistic. But yeah, I mean, obviously we wouldn't do the same for a lot of those things.
I did agree with him after he lights Dan on fire and he sees the bodies in the water. He just locks himself in his room with like a dresser against the door. I was like, smart move. Don't go back out and finish cooking your eggs. Just go upstairs and sit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think of anything else.
Ooh.
I mean, so since we did have two books, it's not fair to compare them, but which one did you enjoy more as a story? I know you rated it lower, but I know that was more because of what we talked about.
I would say, in the moment, this is the trouble with The Fisherman, because in the moment, I would say while I'm reading, I much more enjoyed Hellmouth because of how it flows, and it's like you can actually read it all in one sitting.
But after you sit on it.
But after when I look back at The Fisher, I'm like, oh, that's a great story. But it's easy to forget, how struggling through those chapters.
I'm the exact same way. So, like you said, during the flashback and everything, I was almost about to drop this book and just not read it this month.
Yeah.
But you forget about it once you finish and look at it as a whole, and it's like, damn, it's good, and I can't not say it's good because it did so many things well. It's just how it was set up wasn't the best, and it was still a struggle. I've heard people say that this is one of their favorite books. Like, a guy we watch on TikTok said it was like one of his favorites.
Yeah.
That'll never be me. I'm never going to read this again.
I really don't think I'll ever go back to it. Maybe,
I mean,
maybe if I pick up fishing at some point in my life, I'm like, I really want to go back to that.
Good thing, it was so dense. Besides a few things, of course, I'm not going to forget this story.
Yeah.
So there's no more loose ends unless you really want to theorize. But
it is one of those books where it is a complete story. Like it has a beginning, long, middle, and an end, where it's like you don't have to. It's not like a Hellmouth where you have to like kind of give it your own ending or figure out what the story means to you. It's just like it's a story about grief and loss, and then how those things can lead to poor decision making and rash behavior.
Yeah.
And you just get it all.
It does not need to be fleshed out.
Yeah.
It is good.
It's fleshed out on its own.
And it is what it's supposed to be. I mean, some parts vague, like you said, Lovecraftian. I know they do it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we kind of talked about
Yeah, I think
everything. Oh, that felt long. See,
Was
okay, I want to say this. Obviously this is only our second one, and we're still getting started. But like Ender's Game, I was almost gonna put these below Ender's Game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I did, of course, but once again, other cons. But I just couldn't put this below Ender's Game because I enjoyed it more.
Yeah.
Ender's Game was, good, but I did enjoy this way more. Also, guys, we watched the movie.
I don't know
We're
why
not
I
gonna
looked
talk
at you.
about
I looked
it.
at your camera like you can see me.
We're not going to talk about it,
We're
but
not gonna talk about it here, but I did feel like a passenger in my own body, and I think I've lost like 30% of my IQ by watching that movie.
yeah, it was rough. But yeah, I mean, we should have reviewed it, but
I don't think we should.
We watched. Well, we
I think I
watched.
would have gone insane.
We watched it off a spur of the moment.
Yeah.
And that's all we needed. It was.
If you really enjoyed Ender's Game, don't bother with the movie. You got it. You
But yeah.
did it.
So Hellmouth, the Fisherman. We're done with this month.
Yep. Happy Halloween, everybody. I hope you enjoyed the 2 spooky books. Next month, we're moving away from the spook and we're moving towards the gay.
Oh, don't.
While I said it, I think I hated the way I said it. We're moving away from the spook and we're moving towards
Something more lighthearted.
the dragon.
Yeah. A orange dragon. I don't know how to say it.
Orange dragon sex? That's how you say it.
No one's.
That's it.
What's
We're
the
reading,
name? All right, next month we're reading.
Priory of the Orange Tree.
It has another word after that.
You sure?
But yeah, so that's, as we've kind of said, which I recommend y'all go listen to our.
It's just Priory of the Orange Tree.
Oh, I recommend y'all go look at our or listen to our first ever, where we kind of just talk about our what we like and dislike in books.
Yeah.
Because as you kind of know, I'm a big fantasy guy, and these books were fine, but now we're going to something that's really good.
Yeah. Be prepared for a much longer book.
Oh yeah,
It's a thick boy.
It's like 920 pages or
Yeah.
something.
Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. Of course, it's going to be linked below, as we always do. But that's the book for November 2022. We're going to get it done in a month. So even though it's so long,
Hopefully it's
gonna do
more
it.
binge-worthy.
I think it definitely will be.
Yeah.
This one, you probably recognize the name. It is such a popular book right now that I don't think there's a way it can be like The Fisherman. It's got to be much more accessible for it to have this level of mass popularity.
Yeah, it's very popular. And I think this is spur of the moment. At the end of this podcast, or I think we should probably talk about what else we're reading again, just to recap. Besides this, going to
just
next
like
month.
other reading?
Just let us know, let them know. Just to say, so besides this book next month, I've been currently reading more Cradle here and there, but I've been into what's it called? Organomics. Orconomics. I've been reading that one. I've been reading this series called like The Murder of Crows or something. See These Bones. It's like a superhero series. And I've been burning.
Just so you know, these aren't for the book club.
We're just saying.
Don't feel like you're pressured to read these.
If you care about us as humans, this is also what we're reading. If you're interested,
if you agree with our opinions, maybe check out these books.
Yeah. Oh,
you might like them.
Once again, we didn't say before. This is all our opinions. Any gripes we had, completely us. Make your own evaluations. We don't know anything.
That's a good point.
But yeah, I'm also reading that, and funny enough, during this whole month of reading The Fisherman, I have read 2.5 books out of this series, which is about 800 pages, and it still took me the whole month to read Fisherman. So it's really good if you like superhero stuff.
I have been reading. Well, as you've noticed, if you look at the channel feed, I uploaded a video essay on The Thing. So I've been reading The Things by Peter Watts, which is a short story, the monster's perspective of The Thing, and just kind of writing that script. I also started Cradle. I'm like almost halfway through the first book right now. Pretty good.
Liquid Gold.
I read Dune Messiah, the second Dune book. Might start God Emperor this month. A little undecided. Of course, I got to read a a 40K book every month.
Oh god.
This one I read a Gene Stealer book called Ascension Day. Adrian Tchaikovsky, my favorite author, wrote it. Pretty good. I don't know. I skip around a lot with stuff I read. My genres vary quite a bit. So I'm reading A Picture of Dorian Gray next month. Probably a God Emperor book. A Dune book, God Emperor. I'm gonna finish Cradle. Might start the second book.
It depends.
And then I think I'm gonna read another one of Giles Christian's short stories because he does have. If you got Kindle Unlimited, they're all free on there. He has like 5 or 6.
Which they should be. They're freaking.
I downloaded a second one. I might read it. I don't think I'll do a review on it, but I'm interested in just seeing more of his writing.
And this month might not be able to hit our other things because unless this book goes really fast and it has a really great pace and flow.
Yeah.
It's probably our main book.
I ordered mine today, so.
Oh, I bought mine today.
Yeah, after you text me that you bought the real version, I ordered the real one. So the physical version.
Yeah, I went Kindle.
Oh, you got the Kindle one?
Yeah, I went Kindle. I just decided I didn't want it. I didn't want it. I have enough books, and it's gonna really start to accumulate if I get every single book. Which I do think we're gonna enjoy this one, but we'll see.
Yeah. So Prior of the Orange Tree.
Read it.
It's available at. You can probably find it at Walmart. It's super popular right now. I'm sure you can find it. I'll post the Amazon link.
You could borrow Tyler's book.
Yeah,
if you
text
want,
me
man.
or message me on Discord. I'll mail it to you for a few days. I'll post that in the description, of course. Don't forget to join the Discord. We actually have a few members now, which is exciting.
And stay tuned for this should be our first TikTok.
Oh yeah, we're gonna start uploading to TikTok. I'll post that. Everything will be linked in the description. Of course, the YouTube channel, Discord, TikTok account.
OnlyFans.
We're doing. I'm doing another video essay this month. This month is gonna be on I Am Legend. I'll be comparing what is my favorite horror book, I Am Legend, by Richard Matthews, to the movie, and just show how they're vastly different and why. I Am Legend is one of the greatest horror books ever written. So if you're interested in that, that'll be posted probably before the next podcast. And that's all I got. You got anything else?
I think that's all. Thanks for tuning in if y'all did. Make sure to read the next book. But until then, pause.
Don't have sex with your undead wife. Yeah, you can say the real thing.
Pause and